Hi guys, I'm Becca Otis from Five Lines Pottery, and I'm located in Van.
And I'm Ryan Durbin from RD Ceramics, located in Highland Heights, Kentucky.
And welcome to Wheel Talk.
All right, we are live. We
We're
have guests
live.
today.
Hooray!
Becca's with us. We have two guests as well, Gabriel
Yeah.
and Dr. Bill Collins.
Hello,
Gabriel
hello.
Kline and Bill Collins. What do you go by?
Yeah.
Do you go by doctor
I
or
do
like
not. No.
okay. You go
Just
by
How
Bill
dare
though?
you?
just Bill, please, please.
Bill. All right. All right.
You could be a capital P teacher.
Right? Right. Yeah.
Capital
No,
T.
just Bill. Yes. Thanks though.
Bill and Gabriel, thank you all for joining us. We were chatting a little bit before this, and I'm trying to remember where we left off, but Becca said, I have something to say. Can we start recording? So,
We were talking about like how different areas in the country have little pockets of like really good, like pottery, I don't know, reception. Like people are responsive to the pottery
they
in like
appreciate it more and
pockets.
value
Yeah.
it.
And then I was going to add also that there are also some that are not receptive at all. Like I've lived in a lot of places in the country, and we kind of talked about this before I actually moved out to Indianapolis. I was in Seattle, and well, north of Seattle, and it was really hard to sell pots there. And it was like selling to a crowd of like, I'm sorry, did you have something in white? Um, and and so yeah, and Gabriel, can you say what you were saying about your partner in Germany and stuff?
Sure. Yeah, my partner's name is Anya Bartles, and she can be found professional potter as well, out there on Instagram and everything. Great website, Anya Bartles Porcelain. And so she had a really unique path with pottery. She moved over here after graduating high school in Germany, ended up at Twin Oaks, which is one of the oldest communal living situations, but highly organized. So discovered pottery at the commune, basically, and then went back over to Germany to get her journeyman's papers through the Potters Guild, which is a guild that's existed since medieval times and has a formal training regimen of 3 years where you work with a master potter in every aspect of their business. And then every 6 months, you go to a technical college for a month to study glaze chemistry and formulation and firing and that kind of thing. And then at the end of those
Whoa.
3 years, they give you this test. And one of the things on the test, and I found this amazing, is that they bring in two pots that you've never seen before, a tumbler form and a pitcher, and you've never seen them before. And then you have 1 hour to replicate them to spec in order to get your journeyman's papers. And she refers to it as journeyman's, gendered as such, even though she's a woman, right? And then once you get your journeyman's papers, they expect you to travel around the country, right, working for other potters, doing production throwing for them. And so
Mm,
Anya can make any form. I actually,
mm-hmm.
we got a collaborate two-person porcelain factory. I love making larger pots, so I throw a lot of larger pots that she decorates, and she can knock out dozens and dozens and dozens of forms where people are like, were those cast? And like, nope, she threw every one of those. They are
Hmm.
identical. And that production skill you see very rarely. So it's sort of a different type of situation than American art school, where they're like, yeah, rugged individualism.
Oh,
Mm.
yeah.
You know, who are you? What do you have to say? But they may not give you the technical skill to be able to voice what's in your mind's eye, right? Till years down the line. And then I feel like the focus with the German Guild program was more technical skill and less stress on individual voice, which they figure once you have the technical skill, you'll go out, you'll work for a number of different potters on your journey, which is usually a year, and then you'll establish
Mm-hmm.
yourself, and maybe eventually take on your own apprentices through the guild, right? So trying to hybridize that a little bit at Odyssey in terms of business mentoring combined with technique, combined with a sense of like, who are you? Like, can you get out from underneath the influences that have shaped you, right? So that you have your own voice. So an interesting thing about that technical training is that it's very difficult to make it as a potter in Germany because the culture is sort of mise porcelain, high-end teaware, the Royal Porcelain Factory. And so you may end up like producing porcelain, hands in clay all the time, high level of technical skill, but basically making other people's work. So a designer would
Yeah.
design the piece, you would end up throwing it. Um,
Right.
and there was an example of, we went to a tea shop in Hamburg and there were handmade porcelain mugs, each individual piece hand thrown, hand stamped, inlaid, glazed, and then granted a slip cast handle, but a very nice one that had been designed on this piece. And they were retailing for 20 euros. And the exchange rate is basically 1-to-1 right now. So let's call it a $20 porcelain mug.
Oh my
And then we
gosh.
asked the retailer too, since we have a gallery here and everything, um, is it true wholesale? Like, do you double the price? And he said, yes. So the potter who's throwing porcelain is getting $10, so 10 euros per mug. So if you do the math, they must have to make 10,000 of those a year to, after expenses and everything, make a middle class
Hmm.
living. So Anya, my partner, moved back over here after getting her journeyman's papers and is now set up as a studio artist in Asheville, North Carolina. One of the reasons I moved here, and in fact, the reason and way that we met, was that Asheville has, number one, an amazing music scene. And I love being in that live music environment. And then number two, it's one of the few places I would look in Ceramics Monthly 25 years ago before I moved here. And it seemed like 60% of the people would be out of Penland, out of Asheville, out of Bakersville, out of Spruce Pine. And I was like, what is going on there? I'm from Pennsylvania originally. So stopped on a road trip. We had the most entertaining waiter ever. And that was it, right? I was like, man, every band I ever want to see is playing here. Yo La Tango played the first night that we moved here. We camped in our friend's yard, you know what I mean? And then 25 years later, still here, found apprenticeship, found eventually a wheel, a kiln, basement studio with no running water, teaching at Odyssey. And that eventually, after a decade of teaching here, parlayed into me buying the business from the original owners. So, bit of a long-winded story, but in reference to there being these different areas where culturally people appreciate pottery, pottery making, pottery collecting. North Carolina is not just the Asheville area, but you go out to Seagrove, you go all the way out to like Wilmington. There's really amazing natural clay deposits all through North Carolina, and in fact, all through the Appalachian Mountains. So you find really cool pottery traditions all up and down them from here to Maine. But I think Mingei soda, they call it Mingei soda because there are all these sort of Japanese folk pottery influenced people up there. And so they still have like a number of amazing pottery tours. I think Ojai, California is another area with like Beatrice Wood and, Otto and Vivica Haino and those people making, collecting these like potter personalities. And so keeping that alive with a new generation is interesting, right? Like we were talking about the $100 mug. There's the finances involved in being able to make your living as a potter, and you may need to charge $100 for your mug depending on how much time you're putting into it. That's legit,
Right.
right?
And
But
at least here, there's customers that are willing to buy that for
right,
$100. It sounds like if you're in Germany and you're not part of a factory,
yeah,
there's no chance of you being able to sell unless you have an international market of like
right,
I'm seeing all this stuff about the tariffs and people, do I
yeah,
sell to the US or not? But 80% or 70% of my customers are in the US. Like, how do I eliminate that market? Like,
right,
there's
yeah.
such a
Great
big
question.
market here.
Yeah, so Anya moved back into and she got her naturalized citizen and everything, but as an immigrant who moved over here, one of the things that she's commented on is how supportive Americans are of your dream, right? And that may be like culturally a little different than where the culture she was brought up in. And I think that's a wonderful thing, right? That's sort of like, yeah, get it, like do
Hmm.
you, like express yourself, and then being willing to spend your hard-earned money to support somebody else's dream, I think we're finding is not common everywhere, right? And it's really nice if
Yeah.
you find yourself in an area where it is. And if you're considering a career as an artist and you like doing shows or you want to sell through galleries, you might want to consider researching those types of areas, right? To make it a little bit easier on yourself,
Mhm.
because turning dirt to gold is the old alchemical thing that we're trying to do, right? It's a challenge. You want to be business savvy if you're going to do it. You're an entrepreneur, right? And so you want to
Yeah.
focus on marketing. Like you can make a mug that's worth $100 to $500, but can you market it? Is the
Yeah.
second part of that question, right? Can you find the
Right.
buyers? Yeah.
Yeah, we always say, or we have said that like half of it is making the thing and then half of it is selling the thing. So
Yeah.
it's a lot of the variables and whatnot. I like the we I mean we could go off on like 2 hours on that apprenticeship thing. I love that aspect of like going into the apprenticeship to learn the skills and kind of it almost feels kind of like you're going to school here to get a job to be like a cog in a bigger machine. But for the ceramics, I don't know if that's more like trade school-esque in Germany and all that, but it I yeah. I would love to dig into that later, but
Yeah, I
but
think
Yeah, I think it's
I love everything you were sharing about that.
I was gonna say,
I,
I think there's like comparisons to like there's ateliers, you know, like when like people who just all they do is just like teach them how to draw, how to draw, how to draw, how to paint, how to
Hmm.
paint, how to paint. So they leave with incredible technical abilities, and I think those are also like really European based.
mhm.
I think there's more in America now too. I'm not entirely sure.
I
yeah.
would have thrived in Germany.
Get it.
I have a background in production, so but that's like all I like to do, you know. Yeah. Uh Bill, well,
Yes.
you kind of like Gabriel, you kind of just told us like your story of how you got kind of like well, how your partner got into clay and like how you kind of got to Asheville, but Bill, can you tell us a little bit about like how you got into ceramics and how like where you are and shit like that?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I have maybe a little bit of a different background. I'm a professor at a college in Colorado, and am a chemistry professor. And I kind of inadvertently, kind of around age 35, kind of started to get back into drawing and painting, and then I got the bug. I'm not very good at throwing, but I do enjoy it, and I really like doing sgraffito and all that kind of stuff. And kind of one of the things that struck me, this was maybe about 6 or 7 years ago, was this kind of perpetual dialogue online, which is I love this glaze. Is it food safe? Right? That's kind of the thing. You
Mm,
kind of hear this perpetual question, and I realized that maybe as a chemistry professor, that I might be able to do research on this topic. And so just to kind of see whether or not glazes are food safe. And so I kind of set some students to that in my research group, and we started to kind of develop the techniques, and we learned how to use the instrumentation. And we for several years we posted our results on Glazy, which is a phenomenal glaze website. But it kind of wasn't well seen, right? I mean, like in fact, it would just be kind of like almost like a social media post. You know, we
Mm.
would do like 6 months of research, and we would post something, and then it would just get like buried, and then literally later on you would see another person ask in the on the glaze like, is it food safe? And so you'd kind of it was a tough thing. So I was trying to figure out like what would be a better way to try and disseminate these findings, and maybe even talk more about food safety in ceramics and chemistry of ceramics. And so I thought maybe we should write a book. And I approached
Book. Mm.
Gabriel, who's as Gabriel Kline's done a phenomenal series of amazing glaze books, because I knew he'd already written these just really great books, and asked if he would consider writing one with me on it. And what is it? Almost 3 years later,
Yeah,
Gabriel?
man. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. You made it
3 years
happen.
later,
That's
we
right.
are coming out with the book in about a month or so. And the wild thing is, man, we live in the future. Gabriel and I, who we have almost met weekly online, we've written a whole book together. We've done an insane amount of work together. We've met in real life once at an
nice.
NCECA conference. We just
Yeah.
like we met and decided, this would be a fun project. And so this book has been written across the country every single week. But it's just kind of a funny thing that these days.
That's great. I bet it's great to share that responsibility among you as well. I don't, great, Gabriel, I did see that you did have an Amazing Glaze book as well that came out in 2021 timeframe.
Mhm.
And I'm guessing you did that one. Did you do that one solo? Like sharing the responsibility. It
Yeah,
it's got to make it easier, right?
yeah, the one that Bill and I have coming out is the third in a series. So there are two Amazing Glazes out, and one is more focused on like about 200 different combinations. So each one of those books I wrote solo with. They give you a tech editor and a copy editor. You're definitely working with proper villains in, working with Quarto Press. I've been really impressed with the books they put out. They're hardcover, they're glossy. The design team is amazing, but it's been really interesting to be involved in book writing as part of my creative output and also as a business venture.
Mm.
It works a lot like the music industry, really, where you get paid a small advance to produce the work, which takes about 6 months to write a book, I would say. Not working on it full time. Obviously I'm a dad, and I'm as is Bill, and he's a full time professor, and I'm running Odyssey. So, in that spare time when you can get it, but I definitely think you put between 250 and 400 hours into writing a book like this, including all the testing and everything. Plus, I did 600 tests. Anya threw 600 identical tumblers, 200 of which made it into the second book, right?
I
So
was
600.
wondering,
Yeah, those
I was
tumblers look
wondering
amazing.
who like threw the
Anya threw
tumblers.
those. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and then you started talking about her, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, she did it.
It's my form, right? I've thrown that hourglass tumbler form forever. I put a handle on it for a mug. I make it bigger to make it a vase. And I just gave her the specs on a piece of graph paper. I drew it. And that's how she does it. Graph paper directly from the side. It's so technical, right? And she passed that test of being able to bring in the cup and the pitcher. She still has the pitcher. And so that's been amazing. I think, honestly, over the years, she's made 10,000 of those for me because I do them in my production line and everything. So you're talking about production, and I just love the way that looks when you line a dozen, 2 dozen, 100 of something up. I
Oh
love to do
yeah.
Mm.
it too,
Yeah.
but it's been super helpful to me in my administrative position and working with a lot less. But then, what it works out to is you end up getting a small percentage of every book sold, right? So you end up getting, I found this interesting because I had no idea, but around 8% of whatever the publishing house's cost is. So this isn't the retail price, which then gets doubled. So while it may seem like, oh, yeah, it's a $30 book, you must be crushing it. For that $30, like you might get $1 per book,
Mm.
right? Yeah. So you're going to have to
Hmm.
sell tens of thousands of books, to, and then the other thing you have to do is you have to recoup the advance. You have to pay them $1 a book until you pay the advance back. Does that make
Right.
sense?
They
Yeah.
they hope that
So,
they're gonna make that much money back,
Yeah.
right,
and then
right.
you're
And,
like, okay, then I can start
yeah,
cashing out
yeah.
little bitty checks at a time.
Right. And contractually, if you do not sell enough copies of the book to pay the advance back, you have to pay them back the
Mm.
difference. Right? And I know a couple authors where that was the case, and they're good books. And again, the question is, can you market them too? But if you don't sell 5,000 copies of it, then you're not going to be able to pay back maybe the advance or something. So then after the first two on this like solo mission and doing it, writing this with Bill has been so awesome for a number of reasons. He's an incredible mind. He is super sharp, and he has a body of knowledge that he excels in. A Ph.D. chemist. Man, I'm coming at it from the studio production side of things, right? And he is able to come things from the pure technical chemistry side of things. So the combination, I think, is more than the sum of its parts. And it's been cool too, in that in this hour-long meeting that we have to exchange our writing and research weekly, we're homies now. Like
Yeah.
we've got this really awesome sort of academic and professional relationship, but man, it's cool when you get to make new friends as an adult. I feel like it
Mm.
happens less and less.
Hmm.
And even though I haven't seen him in person in like 3 years, I'm gonna give this guy a big hug when we do actually see each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, what a cool thing. You know what I mean? Having a friendship emerge out of a professional um, engagement and everything is really wonderful. So yeah, it's been cool, collaboration.
And
Brian and I didn't meet for like 2 years before
Yeah,
we,
that I mean
wow.
that
Really?
story
Really? Yeah.
resonates a lot with how Becca and
yeah.
I have grown in this. I would say we were more friends before we were professional like partners, but yes, very similar.
That's
We're
Yeah.
cool.
still not professional partners. Ryan does most of the work. Bill, what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say, you know what, like one of the real things about Gabriel's other books, and I think what was kind of really brought into this book specifically was Gabriel's voice. He's a fantastic writer, and he's a
Mm,
really easy, relatable writer that jokes and has a lot of good kind of like detailed content, but also brings it down to a good level. And I had a lot of practice writing really technically, and so this was a
Hmm.
good experience to write with somebody,
mm,
and then we wrote together to kind of get the unified voice where it was to a non-technical audience. Like this book is not for a scientist necessarily, although I think scientists would enjoy it. But it's really it's for someone who wants to know more about glaze chemistry, and maybe doesn't have a strong science background, and also wants to see a lot of amazing tumblers that are food safe. So.
Right. Bill, I was curious and you kind of touched on this, but what was the most challenging kind of scientific concept you had to translate that would make sense to like potters?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the first thing that is, we live in this age where, the podcast can go long, or the YouTube video can go long, or the blog post can go long. But in books, it's like you have a word count, and you have
mm,
to understand that you're gonna get 4 sentences to talk about this specific topic, and you must move on, right? And so as a scientist, where I really I want to get all the details in. I want to explain everything. I had to, of course, think about there's, a very specific word count sometimes that we had to kind of hit on. I think probably the most technical thing that we tried to talk about was we actually explained the actual instrumentation and how it works on how to test for these metals leaching out of mugs. We did a lot of
mm,
chemistry discussions, but when we talked about, for instance, like atomic emission spectroscopy, we tried to do so explaining, when you're looking up at fireworks exploding over you, that is atomic emission. When you're seeing like far off nebulae, the reason we understand those elements in those kind of systems is because of this phenomenon, and that's how we see the incredibly minute quantities of metals that come out is by lighting them up like fireworks. And so we really tried to keep things as relatable as possible, but there were some pretty technically complicated things that we kind of touched on a little bit, you know.
Does like the term food safe, is that inherently technical or do we kind of overthink that? Is there pretty easy standards these days that narrow that in
Yeah, I
for
would
folks?
I would say that we spend the first chapter defining food safety, and the thing is, I think the challenge, as I think everyone here knows, is that we get this question often, is this food safe? And then the answer is, well, legally it's fine, right? Because it doesn't possess lead or cadmium. So that's the legal definition by the FDA is whether or not it has lead or cadmium. But that's not really satisfying to anybody, because that's kind of like, can I drive 200 miles per hour on the Autobahn? And it's like, is that safe? And it's like, well, it's legal to drive that fast on the Autobahn, but is it safe? No. But I think what we tried to do was we tried to kind of create metrics that aligned with, I think, a more modern thinking about all of the metals that go into a ceramic mug. And the way we did this really was through drinking water standards. And so the idea is, Becca, you are in North Carolina, and so you put a mug under the spigot and you fill it full of water and you drink that water. And Ryan, you're in Kentucky and you do the exact same thing. And I think both of you can reliably feel comfortable that the U.S. government, the EPA, has levels for chromium, for copper, for barium, for all these metals that they say these are toxicologists have agreed this is the maximum allowable amount that can come out of that water spigot into your mug. And everyone across the country can feel safe about that. But the weird thing is that Becca, you fill your mug full of water and then you forget about it and you walk away and you come back and maybe your mug has an unstable glaze that has leached an unsafe amount of those metals back into the water. There is no legal ramifications for that, right? So there is no problem. So what we decided is to take a step back, to look at the largest groups that look at safe drinking water, the EPA, the WHO, the EU Drinking Water Directive, the CDC, and we combined all of their kind of maximum levels of that they consider safe, and then we use the strictest values from all of those organizations in our book. So nothing in our book has values of leaching that exceed any one of those organizations.
Remember that feeling of starting the new school year? New pencils, fresh notebooks, your favorite backpack? That's what opening a Sula Studio bag feels like. It's clean, it's organized, it's yours. Designed by Potters for Potters, it's got 30 pockets, including spots for every tool. Ribs, carving tools, sponges, all in the right place. The bag is made from machine-washable, quick-drying canvas, so you don't have to baby it. And the color options? Over 25, with special seasonal drops that always sell out. One reviewer said it best. The bag gave me the nostalgic feeling of starting a new school year. We felt that. Head to Sula.co and use code WheelTalk for a listener-only discount. And start fresh.
Wow. Okay, so
This sounds so exciting. I'm so fucking stoked for this. I really like science, and I used to hate it. And like, I wish this was an audiobook. Okay, continue. Ryan.
oh, I was good because it's not as simple as just saying. Well, you said like no lead, no cadmium, but I'm guessing there's others that they have varying levels. Like you hear, like don't use glazes with like more than 5% copper carbonate or what. Like
Right.
some of those things are like percentage based, but it's like, but it depends. Like some of the
Yeah.
it's not as clear of hey, these are the materials that you should be more wary of, and this is kind of the range of titanium or whatever. Like
Yeah.
it's
I,
hard to
I,
just get it down that narrow.
we actually spent a good amount of time, and I think one of the big things we really try in the book, and I think Gabriel can speak to this as well, is that we want to offer we want to reduce the anxiety. We don't want to increase the anxiety, right? We want to offer peace of mind, and we want to explain things in a way that lets people know that like chemicals are not scary,
Mm.
and in fact, a lot of the chemicals that are regulated are actually critically important for human health, right? We always hear stuff like manganese, right? Manganese is so important for tissue regeneration and for healthy neurons and all these kinds of things. So we go through all of the elements in this book that go into a mug that could go into a mug, and we talk about every element, and a whole bunch of them we say are totally innocuous. You have no worry about them. And in fact, if you were to make a glaze out of those, then you would never have to worry about being food unsafe. And then we have another group where we say, these are actually really important to get into our bodies, but we have limits, right? We don't want to overdo it. We don't want to have so much in us that we can actually develop toxicity. And then we have another relatively small group, which we kind of put to the side. We say, look, um, there are safe levels for these, but the human body doesn't need them either, right? So, these are things like lithium, right? The body doesn't need lithium in it, but we understand also that you can put lithium in your body and still be healthy. There's kind of like a maximum amount, right? And so we kind of break these things down into these various categories, and we even have a whole section on glazes that have no elements of concern whatsoever. So like literally, like if you are the person who doesn't even want to deal with this, you can just use these whole group of glazes, and there's not even any elements that would be potentially toxic for anybody. No toxicologist would ever consider anything in the glaze dangerous.
Are most of those ones that are risky, is it kind of to the colorants that's pretty much like the air like the base of the glaze is less risky generally, and then it's the colorants that you pretty much need to watch out for.
Yeah, I think that you can definitely say that. A lot of the colorants that we use, they sit in a Goldilocks kind of electron arrangement. Their electrons give us their color, and kind of in this nice little spot on the periodic table. But unfortunately, that's where a lot of the heavy metals are as well. So that the heavy metals that we are really concerned about oftentimes sit in that little window. There are some non-colorants that we are, like lithium is a great example, that, is something that we have to be thinking about potentially. But yeah, generally it's the small percentages oftentimes that we're using as an additive that, we have to be kind of more thinking more carefully about.
We tested for zinc as well.
Hmm.
Just outside of the colorants. Yeah, there are a couple. And to mention, San Pellegrino water has trace amounts of lithium in it, right?
Yeah.
So you can overdose on water, right? It's a know your dosage situation. Like some of these materials are perfectly fine, even required, but you don't want to consume too much of them. And I think that ultimate peace of mind category of glazes is a fascinating one, right? And that's one of the things we wanted to sort of teach in the book is like you could scan a glaze recipe and based on the ingredients that we have established could potentially be objectionable in too high of amounts. If a recipe doesn't have any of those in there, you're good to go, right? Now, we should mention that it's not just leaching. There are a couple other qualities in terms
Mm.
of producing work that is appropriate for food and drink, right? The main one being, texture, the degree of gloss, like whether a glaze is, matte or shiny. And that has to do with the actual topography of a glaze, and whether or not tiny particles of food would enter um, a type of glaze where all the crystals haven't had time to perfectly interact in a like lattice formation that would create a smooth glaze.
Hmm.
So that's another thing that we test. And Bill's got a scanning electron microscope, which is a really cool piece of equipment that we use to, look down to, is it the nanometer? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Is that what we're
yeah, you
talking
can
about then?
like 5
Yeah.
nanometers. Yeah.
Right. And then those photographs are really fascinating looking at, the glazes underneath the microscope. And I think really explain that concept of, you do want a certain degree of gloss in order to make this piece cleanable and to resist bacteria getting embedded in what might be the topography of a glaze that doesn't have a perfect smooth structure to it. Yeah. Mhm.
Does that
I've
include surfaces that are crazed too?
Yes.
Yeah, we do talk a lot about we have a whole section on various common issues like pinholing, dunting, crawling, and we talk a little bit about ways you can fix these potentially and maybe some of the chemistry behind them, right? So trying to just dispel some myths because really things like you said crazing is a chemistry issue. It's not people think it's because you removed it too quickly from the kiln, but really it was kind of fated to craze eventually. You'll hear
Hmm.
that ping noise at some point. So yeah, so we do try and talk a little bit about some problems as well.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Oh,
Um,
Becca.
oh yeah. I have a personal question, not personal question. I have a personal interest question. Okay, so like in the Cone 6 recipes, there's like a June Perry red, right? Is that and then under it has the recipe and then under it says like the chemical analysis chromium 0.00 ppm and then zero point 0.5 max ppm.
Yep.
So does that mean it's like solid, or does that mean it's
That
like,
means that we literally detected no chromium leached from that one at all. Yeah. So that
Yeah.
one we detected nothing. Yeah. Yep.
that was my base glaze for almost every glaze I had back in the
Oh,
day.
Oh,
nice. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
I
Yeah.
good.
feel really proud of myself.
There
I
it is. That's
really
that peace of mind, right? Yeah.
I feel really proud
That's
and
what we
very
want.
lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah. Chromium has like a really low threshold, but a lot of chromium passes because chromium really doesn't leach very much in general.
Mm-hmm.
We find it also, as I think you guys know, oftentimes you're adding chrome oxide in very minute quantities to base recipes as well, but it doesn't really leach
Yeah.
that much. Yeah.
But and like in that recipe, if you like if you took the total above
Mhm.
instead of the additions, that is just fucking fine as dandy, right? Like that's like there's nothing in there that could even happen,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So when in the book we're gonna have the beautiful tumblers, which are our test tiles, which is I love them. And then the base ingredients as well as everything above it, the additions but any in the notes below it's going to say what we tested for. So if there was, for instance,
Yeah.
barium would actually be up in the top, right?
Okay.
But in this case there isn't any barium, so we
Right.
didn't test for it. Yeah.
Interesting. That's really fascinating. I love that.
So like Becca was talking about with June Perry Red, I've seen some potters and I hear of potters using kind of a base and then adding different colorants to get that variety of different tones they're looking for. Is that because a lot of all these glazes are kind of one off and we're not talking, I don't know if there's a section, is there a section in there about layering, but once you start layering,
Variations.
I would suspect if it's got a base and the same colorants or different colorants, that's going to play nicely across the board and you're not messing with the food safety of it as you start layering. But
Yeah, so yeah, well, we do have a whole section on multi glazes that we did test as well. So further down, you can see we have two
oh
and
yeah, I see
three
some. Yeah.
glazes that we've layered. Really just beautiful tumblers. Um, and what I can say to you is yes, like in the base formula, the base ingredients, generally, if you have stable chemistry, and we talk about like kind of what makes stable chemistry, then the chances are really good that if you were to strip out that chrome and that tin oxide, you might be able to switch in a different colorant and potentially also have a stable glaze. But the thing is that we kind of our publisher kind of like had to tell Gabriel and I like you have to stop, right? Because there's so many possible combinations, and there's after over 100, it was like, yeah, you guys gotta we have to get the book out. So we of course didn't test every possible combination. One thing
Hmm.
we did do though, is we actually tested Mason stains in a tremendous number of Mason stains, in a couple of like really good kind of like base
Base.
formulas, and those things are bomber. They were just passing with flying colors each and every time. So at least we did with Mason stains. But yeah, I would imagine that you could probably swap out some of these and still be safe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah, and if you
that's
want
freaking
that
cool.
ultimate peace of mind, like if you do a swap, right? One of the things that we want to try and provide now, granted, the equipment used to test it is not common, but there are labs across the United States where you can send pieces off and they will perform these same tests that we did, so that if you were going to do a large run of production for like a hotel company or something like that. You know what I mean? Like a massive run of something. And you really absolutely needed to know that it was up to the highest standards, right? I would say it'd be worth it to spend a little bit of money and get it tested. And so, I think the retail prices, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Bill, but between like 60 and $100 per element that you're going to test. So if a particular glaze had cobalt and copper in it, it would be like $120. They'd run two separate tests, first to test the cobalt and then to test the copper. And I think for anybody who is, doing it, decking out restaurants or, working that way, or really like deeply involved in producing functional pottery, if it's your business, then yeah, doing that one time to make sure, and then to be able to advertise lab tested food safe glazes, right? I think might
Yeah.
bring peace of mind to your customers as well, right? So, hopefully you've got the knowledge at the end of the book to look at a glaze and decide whether something needs to be tested. And then if it's not one of the ones that's in the book that we've tested, you've got the resources to then go out and get it tested yourself. So if you tweak a glaze and add a different colorant to go from, oh, I want to get this green and now I want to go blue. So now we're using cobalt instead of copper in the glaze. Then I think again, working with like different levels of comfortable, most likely that glaze is going to perform similarly in the base glaze. But if you really want to know absolutely, then there's some labs across the country that you could send a piece off to.
Um, I'm just doing that so I don't interrupt you. I actually work for Speedball, and Speedball sends all their, whenever they
Yeah.
they do a new glaze, they come out with a lot of new glazes all the time. And whenever they do that, they do send it to a test. But funny story, I actually have had my stuff tested before I knew anything about anything. And because uh Starbucks bought my pieces and they had to send out a test.
Yeah.
But also it should be noted that you don't get your piece back.
Oh,
So
Oh,
keep
okay, okay.
keep that in mind. If you do
Yeah.
get your stuff tested, do not send something that you feel like is important to you. Um,
And were you able to
but
send like an actual mug? Is that what you sent, or did they have you send a test tile according to some parameters, or could you just send the actual?
I sent a mug, and
Yeah.
I sent like
Cool.
a certain amount of pieces, and they like smash them up and like do the testing that way.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, lucky for me, they like bought the mugs from me and they sent them. And I know that they don't send it back too because Speedball um told me, like my friends at Speedball told me essentially that, that's how they tested. It's like, wow, okay, bye. See you later, never.
Don't send them your best
Um,
piece.
Yeah.
yeah, don't send in your best piece. So, but yeah, I do have a question. Uh Ryan's not used to this. I don't normally ask questions. Um
Yeah, you do. You do. Go for it.
I do, but yeah, anyway. Like, did you do any testing on like whether the piece is like under fired or over fired and how that affects? I think we kind of talked about this, but like I remember when I was a young potter, and like the bottom of my kiln got to a certain temp and the top didn't. And I would just love to hear if there's a solid glaze at like peak efficiency, temperature, whatever, what does that look like, lower or higher?
Yeah, if you go down to about page 60 on your screen, I'm guessing you're probably looking at it right now. So
I am.
not only did we do that, but we fired the same glaze at cone 6 glaze. We fired at cone 3, cone 4, cone 5, cone 6, cone 7, and then we took scanning
Ah,
electron microscope imagery of the surface. And then we did leaching analysis of that glaze, and you can actually see in these images it going to gloss as it gets up to cones 6 and 7. Um,
uh-huh.
and actually, the amazing thing is really how the leaching of the copper drops and drops and drops as you go down to as you melt that material off of the surface, and it
Mm,
goes down to a safe level at around cone 6, cone 7. So yeah, we do that. We talk about overfiring, underfiring. We talk about how to fix underfiring. So because underfiring is a function of the chemistry, and so it looks like it's matte, but it's not really matte. It's actually just you're feeling unmelted material with your thumb, and you can fix it simply by taking the same piece and putting it back in the kiln and firing it again at a hotter temperature. And if
yeah,
it's a true matte, the matte crystallization happens each and every time. It basically goes from a liquid back into a solid form. But if it's actually underfired, then it will go gloss as it's heated up higher and higher. Uh,
interesting.
yeah, yeah. So we definitely talk about these kinds of things.
Okay, cool. Because yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, I know for sure that a lot of people have probably run into that. I have
Yeah,
many pots out in the world like that.
my actually my horror stories of testing have all most of them have centered around underfired pieces.
That's great to know. That's super
Yeah,
great to
they
know.
like when I in the book we talk about I got 72 parts per million of cobalt and the maximum is half a parts per million. And it actually turned the leach solution pink. So it's definitely I've seen some pretty awesome ones from under firing. Yeah.
It's a good thing I don't sign my work anymore.
Well, the other aspect of underfiring is the vitrification of the clay, right?
Oh
It's not
yeah.
the leaching, but then in terms of that other thing we were talking about being, leaching of heavy materials out is one thing. Bacteria slash mold growing in clay that is still too porous, vitrifies, basically turn to glass. So what
Yeah.
what we found is like if you can find it, um, clays that we think have less than 0.5% absorption at their mature temperature are ideal for functional work. It's going to be very
Mm-hmm.
difficult for water to migrate in there and therefore bacteria causing, you know what I mean, like unsavories. So that's another aspect of food safety, right? But if you can get, and those clays are rare, it's mostly porcelain that's going to fire down to like a 0.5% absorption and fired at the top end of its firing range. But 1%, if you're really trying to do it, but basically look for clays that have the lowest absorption at their
Right.
sure temperature that you can as part of this process.
Can your next book be about clays?
It's called Amazing Glaze, though. How are you gonna,
Right.
are you
Amazing,
gonna leave out
amazing clays,
the
amazing
Amazing
clays.
Glaze?
Yeah,
Amazing
I
Glaze?
like that. I
Yeah.
like that. No doubt, no doubt.
Yeah. Because it
Yeah,
would
that's
be
cool.
interesting to do it would, oh my God, it would be so fucking cool for like, okay, I'm gonna write this book.
Do
I'm not
it.
even gonna tell
Do
you.
it.
No,
Yeah,
I'm
let's do it.
kidding.
Let's do it.
Um, no, but it would be so cool to get all of the clay suppliers around. Not even just like a lot of people dig their own clay, but like, we're talking Kentucky Mud Works, High Water, blah blah blah. Well, not High Water, but they are no more. But like standard and shit like that, and seeing what the actual like shrinkage slash vitrification is, because it's such an under taught
Mhm.
topic, I feel like, in the baby ceramic world, you
Yeah.
know?
Well,
And
those are
like,
tested. Oh, sorry.
oh no, and it was just and so important.
Yeah. Those are tests that you can run at home. You don't need the $500,000 pieces of equipment to do those, right? And I think
I
there are
know,
also
but just for fun.
but the reason why I mention it though, right, is because we've got an educational pottery studio. We go through, I'm going to say, 12 tons of clay per year, and so we
Yeah.
see the varying degrees of function of so many different clay bodies. So one thing that we've noticed, and in doing these tests ourselves, is sometimes the advertised absorption rates and
Mm,
shrinkage rates that they put out as the company differ from what we're seeing. So that particularly comes into play with a lot of different cone 6 clay bodies, which
yeah.
we have tested in our cone 10 reduction kiln. And we find that they're better at cone 10, even though they're only rated to cone 6 by the company. And in fact,
Whoa.
that the absorption rate is at like 4% at cone 6 and then goes down to under 1% at cone 10, suggesting that this cone 6 clay body, by our tests, is sort of underfired for
Like
functional
little
use.
loafers, right? Little loafers is one of
Little
those, I
loafers
think.
look so good at 10, especially in
Yeah, I've heard it looks
reduction. You know what I'm
amazing.
saying? Dude, it rings and everything. If you flick it with your finger, it's like this beautiful light gray. So that was one of the first tests we did. We put a bowl made out of little loafers in a larger stoneware plate that could handle cone 10, figuring that it would turn into a puddle, right? And
Right.
then when we took it out, we are like, nah, wait, this thing is like completely
Solid.
amazing stoneware. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've found that with a number of different clays. And so I'd suggest, like if you have access to that kiln, you can run your shrinkage and absorption tests, both pretty cool things that develop an understanding of clay. See how it lines up against what your clay supplier says,
Yeah.
right?
And
So yeah, I'm sorry, I would like
oh
them to,
no,
and in some cases they do put out those numbers,
yeah.
but in testing those clays, batch to batch, maybe there's, more water in one batch to another, so it affects the shrinkage rate and that kind of thing. So a good
Right.
test to do for yourself, yeah, right at the beginning, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I was gonna do a shameless plug. If you wanted to test your glaze, you could get one of the LNL plug-in fires, and you could just plug it into your house. Ba ba ba. Okay, that's it. Continue.
I know there is some clay body analysis that Ceramics Materials Workshop has been talking about, that they've
Yeah.
been
Yeah, I
analyzing
was gonna
clay
say,
bodies that they've
I
been
think
sent
Matt
and all
Cat
that. So
and Rose have, yeah, yeah. I think that
yeah.
they're I don't know if it's public information at this point or not, but I know that they are trying to look at some of these issues across the way. I mean, I think that it's also like, talking to clay suppliers, man, they have a tough job too, though, because
Mm-hmm.
mines run out constantly, and then people, potters want the exact same material, but they have to sub out with something else, and it's kind of like a moving target for them
Hmm.
too. It's a
Yeah.
tough place to be.
We had Link Henderson on the podcast years ago, and she chatted about that a little bit because, you know, she's like, if she finds out that something's leaving, she'll get like a container full and just like store it
Right.
so that she can have like a year and a half to like figure out the next
Yeah.
like rendition of that,
And for those
you
that don't know,
know,
Link Henderson runs Kentucky Mudworks.
Kentucky Mudworks. Yeah.
Right.
So,
How did
Somebody's
it?
got a container full of Gersley borate somewhere. I know it,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Somebody's got a hidden stash.
it's
Yeah.
probably Link. I'm
Yeah,
just saying.
right.
On in that similar vein, with the shakeup of some of these raw materials over the last few years, how do you all recommend people stay educated on that? Some of these recipes here. I've got the John Britt mid-range glaze book. That's however many years old now. Your glaze book, something's going to change 6 years, 8 years down the road. Like, how do you all suggest people stay up to date with that kind of stuff to make sure that they're aware, and also like how are you relatively adjusting it so that it stays within those ranges? Because it's safe now, but if you can't get some of these materials years down the road, what do you do?
Yeah, I mean, we were really cognizant, because I think, it took over 2 years to write the book, and during that time, Gersley and Custer and all the so
Sure.
yeah, we intentionally didn't include any ingredients that are not commercially available anymore. So
Mm,
whether, if for instance, if it took Gersley borate, then we resubbed it and figured out the chemistry, and replaced it with something different, so that people wouldn't have that kind of an issue. I mean, of course, it gets even more complicated when one considers that, like, our friends in Australia or the UK, they're also going to have slightly different materials as well. So I think that, it is a complicated thing with things running out, as well as different supplies and materials around the world. One thing that is nice is that, in theory, if your glaze is fully melted at its peak temperature, then you can kind of replace things as long as they get the chemistry the same, right? So, because it's like a soup, everything is kind of like fully in the soup at that point.
mm,
So, it is possible that using like glaze calculators for the future, that if something becomes unavailable, it's possible to like replace it with a chemically similar material. But that can be a little bit trickier. That can require Excel spreadsheets and that kind of stuff, which was a little bit outside the bound of this book.
Hmm.
But yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's always a moving target. It's always a little bit tricky.
Yeah, I mean, scrolling through here, I see a ton of G200 feldspar,
Hmm.
a bunch of Gillespie borate. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, anytime we found a recipe that had Custer, and we mentioned this in the book, we suggested, I think it was either Mahavir or the
Hmm.
Eve G200, right?
Yeah.
As a substitute. I used Kona F4 in Chun Celadon glaze for a decade plus, and then they mined that out, and now you use Minspar
Hmm.
as a substitution. And with that, it was chemically so similar. Like, I kept it 1-to-1. I definitely noticed maybe a tiny variation in the glaze, but I'm almost like questioning that. It was so similar. I think Gillespie borate as a substitute for Gersley, like, it's close.
Hi, I'm Taylor from Backyard Kiln. You may know me as the golden voice of several of the ads you hear on this podcast, or from the Wheel Talk Book Club episodes, which are so chaotic and fun. But today I'd love to talk to you about my absolutely true experience with L&L kilns. I bought my first kiln Charlotte secondhand from someone online. She's an old, reliable L&L Easy Fire. I'm a DIY kind of person, and I love to be able to take my kiln apart and fix it myself, and I do. Every time it throws an error, I can either find out how to fix it on their YouTube channel, or if I'm stumped, I just call up L&L customer support, and they're always able to get Charlotte back up and running. They send parts right out to me over the phone. It's super easy. I've always been impressed with L&L's customer service and expertise and the ease with which I can maintain my own kiln. You don't even need special tools to change your elements or thermocouples. I just keep a couple normal household tools down in the studio, and I am good to go. L&L, the easiest kilns to install, use, and maintain.
You know,
It's a funner name.
yeah, it's a funner name. That's right. That's right. And so there are conversions too. Like another thing that we'll run into sometimes is like if a glaze calls for cobalt carbonate and all you have is cobalt oxide, I think that might be another good one. And it's a pretty simple Google search to look up the conversion rate, because basically what you're trying to get is the equivalent amount of, cobalt in there. But one is a more concentrated version than the other, I guess is maybe the kind of simple way to explain it, right? So for some substitutions, it's going to be a one-to-one substitution. But anytime you're substituting one ingredient for the other, I would do that simple Google search first to see if somebody's worked out the direct conversion rate with regards to, I think it would be anything, but specifically ceramics, Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there are actually, I think there's some really great courses now, various people online. You see like ceramic materials workshop on how to actually like teach people how to do these kind of conversions, in that kind of thing as well. So if you people want to really deep dive into start creating your own glazes, there's some awesome online resources as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So,
these young pups that didn't have, like, I feel like when I was creating glazes, I was in there with my triple beam fucking, like,
the triple beam, right?
Yeah, we had to talk about that like 2 weeks ago. Ryan's never used a triple beam, and I'm like trying
we
to
had one
get
in
my
college. I'd seen one. I'd used it a couple times, but yeah.
And I'm just like, my whole glazes, my whole life have just been guessing games.
Yeah.
Like,
it's almost like there's too much information though these days. It's like, what do I need to be worried about? What do I not need to be worried about? There's constantly like information out there. There's like debunking myths and, you need to know this amount of chemistry. You got to reformulate. Like, it's like, what do I need to know?
Yeah, it's like, did you die?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
I mean, some people they want to get into making their own glazes, and it's nice to just have resources of like, here's 100 or 100 plus glazes that are solid, that are food safe, with confidence. You could be like, all right,
yeah,
here we go. This is a good way, and there's such a variety that you can find something that you're happy with, and you can start. There's so many glazes I've still used from what I've got a while ago, and there's so many iterations of what you can do with glaze colors and be happy with. So,
absolutely. Yeah.
Well, that was part of the hope with the book would be to give people starting points, With the whole series, one of the concepts when I pitched it, and what I always did in my glaze classes was I gave you my combinations, not just the individual glazes, but, it takes a lot of research and development. Out of the 600 tests that I did for the second book, 200 were acceptable, right? But then I gave those away. I don't want, and people have different versions of this, but I don't want anything to be proprietary, thinking that you're going to use it differently than I am eventually, right? And people, that tradition in art of like you go to the museum and you copy the masters. Like I had to do that when I was apprenticing. And then the idea is eventually you move out from under your influences, right? And then you've got your own voice. So giving people the starting point, the combinations, right? I bisque fired my piece to this temperature, and then the glaze was at this specific gravity, and then I held it under for this long. I wanted to give everybody the entire process because each one of those is a factor. I used this exact firing schedule to fire this piece. If any of those things vary, the porosity of the bisque, the specific gravity of the glaze, the length of time I submerge the piece in there, or my firing schedule, you will not get the same result. So part of it is we want to help you to understand that if you control those elements as much as possible, it won't be Christmas morning. You'll actually know what's going to happen, right? And develop, and that's cool, right? When you start to like sort of develop more mastery of the materials.
And then you have to find a new hobby.
Right.
I don't know. If I had 10 lifetimes, I mean, that's one of the things I like about ceramics is like, I don't think I can make all the pots that I want to make in this lifetime, and there's just like this almost infinite variety of glaze combinations So one thing I think is cool about these books is like, do you have to know anything about glaze chemistry to get good results as a studio potter? No,
Right.
right? You don't. It's about how you apply it. You know what I mean? But if you want to, right, you can go, how far down this rabbit hole do you want to go? Right? We're like
Hmm.
3 books deep on it. I got a great library behind me. There's still so many variations to be discovered. And that's so
Yeah.
exciting, right? Is probably 2/3 of them are going to be ugly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's
Hmm.
subjective. At least that was my experience. But man, when you find that gem, wow, is that ever a good feeling? And that's sort of what we're after, right? Is like the smile of it all, like the aha moment. Like, why are we doing this? Right? Kind of because it feels good and it makes us feel good. And you may even turn that into a profession, but like in the simplest form, like pottery makes us happy and it also makes us cry, right? Like
Mm.
when it doesn't go right. So we're trying to sort of work both angles there, like more smiles, less tears,
Hmm.
right? Yeah,
Mhm.
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, although I agree with you, Becca, because I know that like in casinos, right? Like there's like a psychology behind like when people pull that, there's like a intermittent reward. So like you periodically
Yeah.
get a good result, but then like a lot of times and that actually encourages people to do it more. So maybe we're just getting that result by opening up the kiln and seeing a lot of bad stuff. Every once in a while, it's good. So it keeps
Yeah.
coming back.
Well, and it's like, well, you're right. Like the more you know, the more it becomes predictable, or the more you know, and the longer you've done it, it becomes more
yeah,
predictable. And I was thinking, like, and when you know the chemistry behind these things, which I don't, by the way, I talk a big talk, but I don't know
You
shit.
don't know yet,
Uh,
yet.
yeah. I do know about a lot of diseases that have happened in the world, but that's about it. Um, but like we have a friend, Andrew Linderman, and he used to be a chemistry teacher, and he's doing fucking insane things with his pots right now because he knows that shit.
Yeah,
yeah,
He's like side firing in an electric kiln to make it look like it's wood fired. And it's
yeah.
fucking incredible, and like
yeah,
the possibilities that and I think that it just like it goes to the next level. It's like, oh, it did this because of this. Like that's why you're
yeah,
excited, not because
Yeah,
you opened the kiln and it's
yeah,
red. Oh my God.
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
no doubt. No
yeah.
doubt. Pottery is so
Yeah.
cool that way. It involves so many different facets that it's so accommodating for everybody. Do you just want to focus on the making and not even glaze it? We can do that. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like, is glazing your thing? And maybe you want to rely on like even commercial slip cast and then glazing or all commercial or whatever. I love that about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That it's so wide open that everybody, well, near everybody, I guess, right, can find some part of it that just floats their boat, you
Hmm.
know?
Mm-hmm.
And you could spend a lifetime just focusing on throwing crazy forms. And like you
Totally.
don't really care about, you don't want to get into the chemistry of the glaze, or you
Yeah.
just want to experiment with the glazes.
Yeah.
Like
You
some
don't
people
have to.
that focus on making a lot of tests. Like I just like the glaze experimenting, and then when I find a good one, I'm like, great, I found a good one. And then you're like, I still want to keep testing, and like that's
Yeah,
what their sweet spot is.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
I'm like, I still love the wow of finding a good combo. And I'm like, okay, that's great. I feel really good when I got that. And then I'm like, okay, now I want to scale it. I want to, can I reproduce it? Can I get that same result? Okay, now I want to scale it to, okay, I'm going to put it on mugs. I'm going to put it on bottles. I'm going to put it on soup bowls. Like, okay, what does it look like as a set? And then I'm like, okay, I'd lost the zest of the first time that I got that result. But now I can get these in people's hands
Yeah.
and get it out, and then I get excited about it. Yeah, that's a brand new glaze compo I've been working on. I just got that out of the kiln. Like I love it, you know.
Yeah. 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 And get reliable results, right?
Mm-hmm.
I really like the way you just described that, going from the aha moment of like sort of uh, like receiving the unknown, this like new information. And then can that translate across all the forms? Can it be like the cohesive element that binds a whole line of work together and everything? That's that basic process. In terms of testing, I do recommend that every time you fire, take an extra 30 seconds and try something new, right? Like once a month,
Mm-hmm.
spend an hour just making test tiles. And then I think it's really good to make a test tile that takes like 3 minutes, right? See if you can
Mm-hmm.
actually make a tiny little pot. Because if it comes out really well, you can keep it, you can gift it, you can sell it. If you make like one of those T-shaped things, which are awesome, I know you can like throw them on the wheel quickly and make 12 with the wire, right? But if that thing comes out awesome, is it a saleable item? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I like that notion of like a meaningful test tile, and then I think that if you put 1+ in every firing, just over the course of your a year, man, you're going to discover something new. But it's sort of like a practice. You know what I mean? You'll get used to it, and pottery can have a certain like rhythm and discipline to it. But yeah, see what you can do just as a potter's challenge out there. You know what I mean? Because there are so many like untold frontiers, and I think one of the goals is that notion again of like, what do I have to say? So the combinations that I love may not be something that represents somebody else well. I always like thinking of it like tie dye or something. Like everybody's got that one individual tie dye that just reflects. That's what I'm talking about. That
Becca's wearing a tie-dye shirt.
their personality, right? And that tie dye may not look right on somebody else, right? So I think that glazes are similar. Who are you? Like, does your mug match your shirt? Then yeah, you're probably on point. You're probably repping yourself pretty well. And yeah, that maybe being the goal, right? Is have some good starting points, maybe learn how to tweak a glaze a little bit. And then in working with those materials, if you throw one test in there, eventually that knowledge that you gained becomes integral to your own work, and then hopefully allows you to express yourself more articulately visually.
Mm.
Love that. Love that. There's a section throughout the book called The Art of Science. Can you explain to people like what that is and how you decided who you would include there?
Yeah, I mean, so at the end of every chapter, we wanted to include an interview with um, people who sit at the interface of ceramics, pottery, and science, and in whatever capacity. And so these are people like Matt and Rose Katz, John Britt, Linda Bloomfield. So these are people who have a strong presence in the community, who have really have a strong interest in developing kind of glaze science, if you will. And so
Hmm.
we got a chance to interview them and show off some of their work and talk to them about their and ask their thoughts about what do they think it means to be someone who teaches in glaze science, and where is the field going, and all these kind of great questions. And they were a lot of fun, actually. It was a lot of fun to go through there and do the interviews with them, and to see their amazing work also.
Right. There's a there's Joe Thompson in there,
There
which
is.
he's like newer to the field. He does not currently, but will he have a photo of himself in there? Do you know? Because the elusive Joe Thompson,
No doubt.
people might just
I've
want to buy
seen
the
a
book to see what he
photo.
looks like.
We
So,
tried.
We
We
tried.
tried.
We tried. Actually,
Ooh.
in fact, we went back and forth a little bit because we were like, all
Yeah.
the other people have like full like shots of their whole body almost,
Yeah. Yeah.
and he's like, nah, I don't think so. So
Okay,
He
okay.
has
Ooh.
he has one photo of himself on his Instagram. One.
Yeah, so we were able to get a process shot, which we selected because everybody else got a headshot. And then Joe has been hitting the gym, man. He's got some biceps. He's like holding this pot and everything. So we
yeah,
chose that one. So everybody else has
Wait,
a headshot, and
I
Joe's
want
got
to
like a
see
bicep shot, you
I
know?
want to see Bicep Joe.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
You'll
Bicep
have to
Joe,
wait for the book, Becca, because right now, what we've
Oh
got
my
so
God, it's
far,
not there. I'm so
there's no photo.
sad.
I was like, are they holding it back until the
no,
last minute until it hits
Oh,
print?
oh, 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 no, interesting. The copy that the copy that we send you is there's like one finalized version, and that was one of the questions, right? Is like, what do we do for Joe?
right,
So that
right.
one went in afterwards. So I guess there is some intrigue and mystery left. If you want to see, the gun show that is Joe Thompson, you know what I'm saying? Then yeah, you have to pick up the book.
That
That's
is
Yeah,
great.
so
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah,
yeah,
what amazing pots though. Like what beautiful
Oh
effect
yeah.
that guy gets with it looks like a combination of like slip trailed maybe black porcelain dots, and then the way the glaze cascades over
Hmm.
those raised areas, and oh man, yeah, wonderful
See,
effect.
that's what happens when you get smart people to make pots, like when they're first smart and then they make pots. It's like this consistent, it's like Ryan, like consistent, calculated, like always going to be exactly what you want it to be because you know your shit. I wouldn't say Ryan's as smart as Joe. He's not. But
I'll take that. I'll take that. That's fine.
yeah, I think
Well,
that's fair.
we wanted to invite Joe, and I'm glad we got him in the book because he's, as you know, he's very inventive with his glazes. He's endlessly inventive, but he's also,
Hmm.
he, like the other ones, he shares everything.
Yeah,
He's very good about just saying like, this is exactly how I did this, and
yeah,
I don't mind if you, like what Gabriel was saying, take this and see if you can make it your own. So
right.
it was great to interview him. Yeah.
Right. You'll see some of his recipes throughout. And he
Yeah.
even went the process of reformulating. I think he had to do that. His first 5 series, he had old recipes that had some of these materials that weren't sourceable anymore and had to reformulate. So
Mm.
it's all constantly a moving target.
It is. It really is. Yeah.
Gabriel, do you need to go?
So, picking up my daughter in a hot minute, you know what I mean? I got a couple
So
more if we want to go over anything else. Yeah, yeah.
are there anything that you see on the horizon for emerging glazed materials or safety concerns that you think are going to be bigger topics in the next few years after digging in this deeply with food safety?
Uh,
Yeah, I think that's that's tricky. I know that the EU is actively thinking about there are agencies within the EU that are actively thinking about whether or not to elevate some of these other leaching concerns to more of like a legal standard in the same way that we
yeah.
have cadmium and lead. And so there are
Interesting.
processes happening in the EU. I don't know where those are going to be at. I think I would have said at one point perhaps that the EPA would have, the EPA has been looking at lithium and other things as well. I don't know what kind of stance now, the EPA and what they're doing. But yeah, I guess, it's one of those things that I think maybe if you get to the goal of the book, we kind of like wanted to get ahead of everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so like
Yeah.
why wait 5 years when something happens and all of a sudden you're scrambling? Why don't you, as Gabriel was saying, like, start testing now, find some stuff you love, know that it's has food safety qualities, and it works well on your clay body and everything, it expresses your work well, and then not have to do anything in a couple of years, potentially.
Yeah, you got plenty of testing to do. Two
Yeah,
years. It could take you 2 years to get through plenty. Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely.
I have a
So if
question.
go go Becca, go Becca.
Well, I had a question to kind of end it out. Do
Hmm.
you have a question that's short, Ryan?
No, I was just gonna
Okay.
get to the closing. Yeah.
Oh, my, I was wondering if you guys could share your favorite book, either about pottery or about science, that you didn't write.
Oh, that's a great question. Um, I'm looking at my library back here.
So is Bill. They're both
Yeah, yeah. So,
Bill's getting up, looking at
well,
his
yeah, yeah.
bookshelf,
Well,
maybe
so
getting one
so
off.
for my 16th birthday, I got into pottery right around then, and so I mean we're talking decades now. But my best friend and neighbor growing up, Nathaniel Norton, he got me the Potter's Companion, right? And
Is that
that
the
book,
black and white one?
yeah, yeah,
I've
that one,
read that one.
yeah, that one has blown me away over the years. You know what I mean? And I keep going back to it, which has been really, really fun. The Complete Potter's Companion, and uh, yeah, I think that one is an absolute classic. And then I gotta say, like John Britt's books changed the game, right?
Mm.
I think a lot of old books used to be very text based and it just cost more money to put photographs in, especially like glossy photographs. So the older school books from the 50s, 60s, 70s that are like classic tomes, Clay and Glazes for the Potter by Daniel Rhodes and everything. I had to read that thing 3 times because it would put me to sleep.
Such a textbook.
It's amazing, and so then when John's book came out, Lark was putting, I think, good money behind ceramics books, right? And so, visually taking pictures of all the pulverized ingredients so that you weren't just talking about like this, chemical description of a material. You actually got to see it. And as a potter, I thought that was great because like I'm in the studio looking at these materials, and sometimes when I see just the chemical formula of them, it doesn't have the same maybe like reference point as it might for somebody like Bill. It even would cause some confusion in my potter brain, who's just basically going after the color and the texture.
Hmm.
So uh, yeah, I think like the visual representations of all the dry materials, John Britt's clay and glazes, the mid range and the high fire book are both, like Hall of Fame type clay and glaze books. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about
Bill?
you, Bill?
Well, I mean, I'll plug Gabriel's other books. I think those books they're on my shelf right there,
No,
Thanks,
and
man.
not allowed.
they're really
Nope.
great.
Has to be,
But,
has to be.
I'll go in the diametrically opposite direction. So this is Fundamentals of Inorganic Glasses.
Oh,
This
wow.
is a textbook, effectively. This is a Bible on the heavy science of glass chemistry.
That is
Uh,
so cool.
yeah.
I would
So
read the shit out of that.
yeah, it's not, I mean, it is readable. It's you don't need like an advanced degree, but it is complicated and it will take a while to kind of go through. But it gives you kind of an understanding of like what a glass actually is, which is kind of cool. You know.
That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are really good answers.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I saw in that progression of like reading Daniel Rhodes, which was, academic, technical, um, very straightforward, but then John Britt started to breathe some life into the material through the writing. And so
Yeah.
that's what I've tried to do in the Amazing Glaze books is make them conversational. Like that tone is on purpose. Like there's a number of different voices you could write this thing from. But the idea was like use levity, use punning, you know what I mean? Like if you can make
Yeah.
somebody smile or laugh using the language, that kind of breathes some life into what can be considered, some of the other books are very dry,
Yeah.
Hmm.
and so, hopefully these books are also a good read, not just full of good information, but easy to read and fun to read. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay, briefly, Gabriel, will you tell us the past books that you've done? I'll give him his time for that. Your past two
Sure.
books, and then we'll remind everybody what the current book is.
Yeah, yeah. Amazing Glaze, Techniques and Recipes, and then Amazing Glaze Recipes and Combinations, right? And so
Okay.
those are the first two. They both work well, right? There's a tiny little bit of overlap in terms of application, which is really important in terms of getting the results you want. But what we tried to do in all three books is use different glazes throughout, right? We even
Okay.
tested some of the glazes for Amazing Food Safe glazes that were in other books, but we kept them in an appendix at the end so that every
Yeah.
one of the combinations throughout all three books is unique. Does that make sense? So in the
Yeah.
trifecta of Amazing Glaze, you're going to find maybe 300 combinations, like maybe 120 glazes, and then 300 different combinations. So hopefully in there's something for everyone.
And
Yeah.
the recipes and combinations book, I do see in the title it says low fire, mid range, and high fire. So it does
Yeah.
span all three.
Yeah.
This newer one specifically
Is
calls
mid and
out why
high.
they omit low fire glazes from the book. There's a section in there about that, but
Yeah, we focus mostly on mid and high fire, and we do talk about why we don't do low fire, but a lot of it actually comes down to, once again, like eventually like our editor was like, okay guys, let's publish this book. Like,
Mhm.
there's like
Yeah.
so many things you could keep testing and so many rabbit holes you could go down to. So yeah.
Okay, so this current book is, say it again, the name.
Amazing Food Safe Glazes.
Perfect.
And it's coming out. Well, you can already pre-order it right now on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, lots of places. And in fact, actually, I think that there's like a cool competition or prize kind of a thing. So if you do pre-order it, they'll do like a raffle, and a couple people will win free chemical analysis. So we'll take some of your glazes and we'll analyze them. And then also a couple people will get to like chat with Gabriel and I. There are a whole bunch of pieces from the book that we're going to give away to people who pre-order.
Cool.
So yeah, look at that. Those guys right
Review
there.
like nasty combinations here.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, so we do have that going. And the actual book will drop, I think, at the end of October. So like around October 20th or thereabouts.
Fantastic.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I'm
Good
actually
time.
I'm
This will be
gonna
coming out at a good
pre-order it.
time.
Actually, Wheel Talk is going to pre-order it for me.
Ooh, yes,
nice.
we can do that. We can do that.
Cool.
Very cool.
I
Yeah.
did notice that I did see the Amazing Glaze Recipes and Combination book on Libby, I think. So I did see there was like a digital version that from the library that I found.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, we have it on our Libby. Me and Ryan share.
Nice.
Yeah, there's Kindle versions of both books, and it's pretty cool. There's co-editions in Spanish, Dutch, French, and Chinese. How
Love
about that?
that.
Isn't that cool?
Love that.
ooh,
Love
nice.
that. Okay, Gabriel, thank you so much. You have to leave. Bill, thank you so much. You don't have to leave if you don't want to, but
Well, I
but yeah.
have dinner in a few minutes, so
There
I
we
think
go.
Yes,
also.
I'm starving, so
Well, we appreciate you all coming on. I think this was a
yes,
great
thank you so
conversation.
much.
Folks will get so much value out of this. Check out the book
Yes,
and
and come
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Guys,
Absolutely.
what a cool podcast. Thanks so much for having us.
yeah,
Thank
thank you so
you.
much. All
Yeah.
right, bye
Yeah.
everybody.
Bye.
Guys.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to another episode of Wheel Talk. This podcast is made possible through the contributions of all of our listeners who always ask us great questions, leave us reviews, and contact with us through social media. Thanks to all the fellow makers as well who take time to be interviewed and share about their lives and businesses.
And thank you to Ashley from Boldover Ceramics and Lindy from Lindy Garner Ceramics for their assistance on the Whale Talk Podcast Instagram. You are invaluable. Thank you to everybody.